So, good morning, students, and thank you for joining with me. Uh, I promised that I will take another class online, via online, on civil society and its relationship with the state. Right. I I want all of you just to mute yourself, audio and video, so that we can have a better experience. And since I'm recording it, that better experience will subsequently, help you when you view this lecture on YouTube. Okay. So I hope that you will obey this direction. Now, about the relationship between the civil society and the state. Right. Now, why, a civil society is there, why the state is there, and what is their respective functions, right? And is, I mean, the state, whether it is not enough, right? I mean, uh, what is the function of the state and civil society? I think the function of the state and civil society is more or less same. But then why civil society is there? Civil society is there primarily to check the state, right? Now I can remember about Ronald Dworkin, in his essay on taking right seriously. He, posing a threat, and that threat is from the state. To him, you know, when there is any violation of right, then we go to the state. I mean, when we are going to the court of law, we are actually going to the state. So state gives us justice. State ensures our right. But then Dworkin is asking this question. If state violates your right, then what you need to do? So can you say that rights are only legal and there is no rights beyond the law? Ronald Dworkin was trying to, understand rights. In which sense we should define right? Should we define right in legal terms or should we define rights in moral terms? And he concluded that by analyzing everything, he concluded that the rights are the moral entitlement. Why? Because the moment you conceptualize rights in legal terms, then you are giving huge power to the state, and there is no limitation over the state. Right. Now, if state can violate your right, if the state will violate your rights, then you are gone. Right. So Ronald Dworkin did not, empower the state to control your right. I mean, control means to have a, uh, or state should not be the hegemon over your right, because the rights are not legal to Dworkins. Rights are moral, and morality is always above the law. What is the difference between the morality and law? All laws are moral, but the present laws are the past morality. And what about the present morality? And present morality will become the future law. So, morality is the driving force of the law. Hence, right must be, moral. Now, why, I said all these things about, Ronald Dworkin, this is also very much helpful and relevant in this context, right? So, if the state can successfully work it function properly, right, for which state is established, then what is the need of civil society? The emergence of civil society exposes this very fact that there is some problem in the function of the state or in the role of the state. And therefore, civil society has emerged. Civil society has emerged to deal with the problems which is created by the state. And it has worked a mechanism I mean, it is something, civil society is something between the people and the government, people and the state. So civil society is a mechanism of the people through which, people try to, deal with the state. Even people can challenge the state, individual can challenge the state by taking the help of civil society. Hence, civil society and the relation between the civil society and state, it is an important aspect for all individuals to understand, because civil society is in between the individual and the state. What is the relation between the individual and civil society? And what is the relationship between the civil society and the state? What is the relationship between the individual and the state? Now, there are three kinds of relationship. And today, we will discuss one kind of relationship. That is, what kind of relationship is there between the civil society and the state? Now, to this question, there is no single answer. We cannot say that this is the relationship between civil society and state. We cannot say that civil society and its relation with the state is very much positive, very much negative, very much neutral. Now, this is a kind of vague type of understanding. Now, there are multiple relationships between the civil society and the state. Let me share my PPT and let's enter to these multiple relations between the civil society and the state. So, students, are you getting so far the way I introduced the topic? Did you get? Did you get what I just said?
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Thank you. So I said, there are multiple relationships between the, state and civil society. I hope that you can see my PPT. Is it visible on your screen?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Now, this is the multiple relationship between the civil society and the state. So there are 6 perspectives on civil society-state relation, which are neither mutually exclusive nor necessarily compete with each other. It's not that civil society and state, they are, exclusive concepts. There is no link between the civil society and the state. It is not like that. And it is also not like that civil society and state, they always, have conflict with each other. It's not like that. Different theories, they have brought different kinds of relationship between the civil society and state. And from their work, 6 types of relationship has been derived. First relation, the civil society apart from the state. So what is apart from the state? Apart means civil society is separated, or civil society is at a distance in place and position from the state. So civil society and state both are, separated. Both have different sphere. Both have different, function. That is first understanding. Second understanding is that civil society against the state. Against means civil society is opposed to the state. So civil society is there because state has done something wrong and civil society is there to correct it. So what the state does, civil society is always against it, because here civil society thinks that the state has an agenda and state is pursuing its policy to to satisfy its own agenda. Hence, the responsibility of the civil society is opposing to the state. So you got this point against this point, and civil society in support of the state. Support means civil society, providing help to the state. Providing help to the state. You can remember about, Marxian, concept of civil society. For them, the state is a bourgeois state and the civil society is all about Now, civil society is based on economic relationship, and this economic relationship controls the state. So, civil society and state, in Marxian perspective, that is in support to each other. So, civil society support the state, and state support the civil society. Right. Then the next point is the civil society in dialogue with the state. Dialogue means basically discussing to produce an agreement. So here, civil society as an entity and state as an entity, they have a dialogue with each other and they come to a agreement, and accordingly, civil society and state, they don't fight, rather than they agree with each other, through, discussion and deliberation. The fifth kind of relationship is partnership. See, I have underlined all these terms: apart, against, in support, dialogue, partnership. So partnership basically means it is cooperating. So the support and partnership is very much similar, but there is a difference. What is the difference? I just said, here civil society in support of the state, it basically means that the civil society will support the state, not other way, right? I mean, I said wrong things while I interpreted it. The state will not support the civil society. Rather, the civil society will support the state. But here in partnership, that this is mutual, right? The civil society and state will cooperate each other. They will cooperate each other. And civil society beyond the state means civil society is outside the state. That means there is a state in civil society. There is a state in civil society. So here civil society takes the global character. You can find multiple states within the civil society. So let's enter to all these kind of relationships. So first, civil society apart from the state, and let's read it. In thinking of civil society as apart from the state, three features stands out: the voluntary nature of participation, the plural quality of activities, the negative character of the civil society boundary. Right. The membership of civil society is not mandated by law, right? But the membership of a state is always mandated by law. So here we are discussing how civil society is different from the state. That is one kind of relationship. The first relationship, the voluntary nature of participation. In civil society, you can develop the voluntary, participation, right? It is not mandated by the law, but the membership of a state is always mandated by the law. In contrast, we are born into a state and governed by coercive laws. On one hand, while living within a state, with a very few exceptions, we may not opt out of legitimately enacted laws. On the other hand, association may not use coercion and force to retain members. So what is the difference between the civil society and the state? Now, state, if you are a member of the state, then state has the right to use, coercion. State has a control over you. But on the other hand, if you are a member of a civil society, then you are not coerced. Right? The civil society will not force you to, retain your membership. Right? So this is the first difference between the civil society and the state. So what is the difference? The civil society is not mandated by law, but state is, mandated by the law. Moving to pluralism. So I think this point is clear. Voluntary nature of participation. स्टेट में वॉल्यूंटरी नेचर ऑफ पार्टिसिपेशन नहीं है, क्योंकि लॉ सब कुछ तय करता है, और सिविल सोसाइटी में वो वॉल्यूंटरी नेचर ऑफ पार्टिसिपेशन है, जहां कोर्जन फोर्स इस्तेमाल नहीं होता है, मगर स्टेट कोर्जन फोर्स इस्तेमाल कर सकता है। ये पॉइंट गया। उसके बाद इस पॉइंट को आइए, प्लूरल क्वालिटी ऑफ एक्टिविटीज। नाउ मूविंग टू प्लूरलिज्म, while the state is burdened with the job of pursuing collective ends and public goods, In civil society, individuals come together to pursue the particularistic end and group specific good, some of which may well also be, public good. Now, what is the difference between the state and the civil society? Now, according to this view, the scope of state is, large. It is bigger than the scope of civil society because state का ऊपर एक burden है. So state is burdened with the job of pursuing collective ends and public good. स्टेट के लिए ये जो कलेक्टिव एंड पब्लिक गुड का जो जिम्मेदारी स्टेट का ऊपर है, मगर सिविल सोसाइटी का ऊपर वो जिम्मेदारी नहीं है. इन सिविल सोसाइटी इंडिविजुअल्स कम टुगेदर टू परस्यू देयर पर्टिकुलरिस्टिक एंड. So every group has a particular end and they pursue that particular end. But we cannot say that in that particular end that the public good but common good is not there. But state is always, there is a responsibility over the state for working towards the common good. But it is not the responsibility of the civil society to work for the common good. Though sometimes their demands, their group demands, takes the character of common good. And coming to this negative character of the civil society boundaries. Okay. The boundary of civil society is essentially negatively designed primarily to keep the state out, not to keep anything in. इसका मतलब क्या है? Now, there is a civil society in state according to this view, right? A state may constitute the civil society, but the civil society does not constitute the state. And that is what it is understood by negative character of the civil society. It means civil society is not the state, but state, we cannot say that state is not civil society. That means state takes care of civil society, but civil society does not take care of the state. So the boundary of civil society is that anything which is related to the state, it is not a civil society. Okay. So students, did you get this view? Civil society apart from the state? May I get a response? Then I'll move to the next slide. Did you understand?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. Then civil society against the state. ये दूसरा view है. Now civil society is or can be seen as an agent that interacts with and indeed opposed to the state. Right. So civil society क्या करता है ना, as an agent interacts with and opposed to the state. तो सिविल सोसाइटी का काम क्या है ना, वो स्टेट के साथ इंटरैक्ट करेगा और उसको ओपोज करेगा. सिविल सोसाइटी अगेंस्ट द स्टेट. Now, if a state depends on the depoliticized citizenry for its stability and actively discourage the formation of civil society, then civil society is perceived to be antithetical to the state. Very crucial statement. That's I want all of you to read this sentence and try to understand, and I am there to help you. इसका मतलब क्या है ना, मान लो कि स्टेट citizen, every citizen, they have the right to be politicized, right? I mean, if the citizens are more politicized, right? If citizen plays, more politics, then it is always a challenge for the state. So state always wants citizens to be depoliticized so that citizen may not understand what the state is doing and undoing. That is always the perspective of state according to this version, or according to those theorists who holds that civil society is against the state. So if a state, I'm rereading, if a state depends on depoliticized citizenry for its stability, so state उसका स्टेबिलिटी के लिए मान लो कि स्टेट डिस्करेज करेगा कि उसका सिटीजन पॉलिटिसाइज्ड होना नहीं चाहिए, और हमेशा स्टेट क्या करेगा ना, एक्टिवली डिस्करेज द फॉर्मेशन ऑफ द सिविल सोसाइटी। इसका मतलब सिविल सोसाइटी का काम है टू पॉलिटिसाइज दिस सिटीजन। द मोर citizens are politicized, it is always a challenge before the state, and the more state takes these challenges, the state becomes a welfare state। नहीं, कभी कभी स्टेट का अपना एक वेस्टेड इंटरेस्ट होता है, कभी कभी वो सोचता है कि नहीं, सिटीजन पॉलिटिसाइज्ड होना नहीं चाहिए, और इसीलिए वो क्या करता है ना, इस सिविल सोसाइटी का जो फॉर्मेशन उसको हमेशा वो डिस्करेज करता है। तो everything starts with the state because state has a agenda, and what is the agenda of the state? It's stability। तो स्टेट अपना स्टेबिलिटी के लिए कभी कभी सिविल सोसाइटी का जो फॉर्मेशन का ऊपर थोड़ा और फॉर्मेशन को डिस्करेज करता है, डोंट फैसिलिटेट towards the formation of civil society। Now in that situation civil society is perceived to be antithetical to the state। जब स्टेट डिस्करेज करता है सिविल सोसाइटी को, तभी सिविल सोसाइटी क्या होता है ना, इट बिकम्स एंटीथेटिकल टू दिस स्टेट। तो शुरुआत किसने किया है? शुरुआत इसने किया है और उसने रेस्पॉन्स दिया है। व्हाई सिविल सोसाइटी अगेंस्ट द स्टेट? बिकॉज स्टेट हैज ए एजेंडा, एंड व्हाट इज द एजेंडा? इट्स स्टेबिलिटी। और उसके लिए स्टेट क्या करता है ना, डिस्करेजिंग द फॉर्मेशन ऑफ सिविल सोसाइटी। Now, in totalitarian states, civil society under certain circumstances assert itself against the repressive, formal institution of the state। तो totalitarian state में state हमेशा powerful होता है, state हमेशा civil society का formation को discourage करता है, और उस totalitarian state में civil society क्या करता है ना, वो हमेशा it always stand against the repressive formal institution of the state। So does it mean that civil society is the vehicle of the revolutionary breakthrough to democracy? क्या इसका मतलब यही है कि सिविल सोसाइटी के माध्यम से डेमोक्रेसी, आई मीन देयर इज अ सक्सेस, और डेमोक्रेसी बिकम सक्सेसफुल थ्रू द सिविल सोसाइटी? इसका मतलब क्या ये है ना, इट मे बी स्ट्रॉन्ग एनफ टू ओवरथ्रो द टोटलिटेरियन स्टेट, इट मे स्ट्रॉन्ग एनफ टू ओवरथ्रो द टोटलिटेरियन स्टेट, बट मे नॉट बी स्ट्रॉन्ग एनफ टू सर्वाइव द डेमोक्रेसी। उसका आंसर क्या है ना, सिविल सोसाइटी डेमोक्रेसी को, और आई मीन फॉर द फॉर द प्रोटेक्शन ऑफ डेमोक्रेसी, ओके, इट्स नॉट प्रोटेक्शन एक्चुअली, टुवर्ड्स द सर्वाइवल ऑफ द डेमोक्रेसी, टुवर्ड्स द सर्वाइवल ऑफ द डेमोक्रेसी, civil society may not be strong enough to be the reason for the survival of the democracy, but certainly civil society is strong enough to overthrow the totalitarian state। So overthrowing the totalitarian state does not mean helping to survive the democracy। ये पहला, I mean this is the first, but then to survive, the survival of democracy needs much more things। The survival of the democracy will begin with the overthrowing of totalitarian state, but overthrowing the totalitarian state does not mean that democracy is survived, right? So street demonstration helped bring down the communist government in 1989, but the question remains, is it, or is what is good for bringing down the dictatorship also good for sustaining a democracy? ये जो क्वेश्चन रह जाता है, ये क्वेश्चन का आज तक किसी ने आंसर नहीं दिया है। क्या डिक्टेटरशिप को जब हम we bring down the dictatorship or dictatorial form of state और a totalitarian state, और उसको हम कैसे करते हैं ना, स्ट्रिक्ट डेमोन्स्ट्रेशन के हिसाब में करते हैं, स्ट्राइक करते हैं, बहुत सारी देयर आर सो मेनी मीन्स ऑफ सिविल सोसाइटी व्हेन दे पुल डाउन एनी टोटलिटेरियन स्टेट। या जो चीज सिविल सोसाइटी एक टोटलिटेरियन स्टेट को पुल डाउन करने के लिए करता है, क्या वो सब कुछ डेमोक्रेसी को सस्टेन करने के लिए क्या वो सही है? इसका आंसर किसी ने नहीं दिया है। इसका मतलब हो भी सकता है, नहीं भी हो भी सकता है। There are certain, methods of civil society that may not be, good for the democracy, but there are certain methods which is, the need of a democratic state. So, students, did you get this point? Did you get this point? Hello?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Give a quick response. Give a quick response. Now, civil society against the state. Okay, it's continuing actually. Okay. Now, theorists and social scientists don't agree on whether, contentious civil society is good for democracy or not. But this contentious civil society is always good so far as, overthrowing the totalitarian state is concerned. But this civil society, contentious civil society means, you know, civil society is very much litigant, always oppose, always brings, certain, points, always disagree with the state. Now, totalitarian state को ओवरथ्रो करने के लिए ये कॉन्टेंशियस सिविल सोसाइटी चाहिए, मगर डेमोक्रेसी के लिए क्या ये कॉन्टेंशियस सिविल सोसाइटी सही है, इसका ऊपर थियोरिस्ट और सोशल साइंटिस्ट एग्री नहीं करते हैं. Now, if working through formal state institution is a sign of healthy and stable democracy, then civil society expressing itself in the form of strict demonstration and protest may not necessarily produce political stability and good for the public policy. ना ये एक व्यू है जिसने कहा गया है कि दिस कॉन्टेंशियस सिविल सोसाइटी इज नॉट गुड फॉर डेमोक्रेसी. कब? ना मान लो कि जो स्टेट है वो फॉर्मल स्टेट इंस्टीट्यूशन के साथ और फॉर्मल इंस्टीट्यूशन के साथ मान लो कि स्टेट फंक्शन करता है, एंड एज लॉन्ग एज स्टेट परफॉर्म्स इट फंक्शंस through its formal institution, not informal, formal institution, then it is always considered as the sign of a healthy and stable democracy. Now, if the state does this thing, then civil society in the form of, street demonstration and protest, it is not good for democracy because it may produce, political, instability. It may produce bad, public policy. So protest may not necessarily produce, political stability. और स्टेट के लिए पॉलिटिकल स्टेबिलिटी बहुत ही अच्छा है. Right? Only a stable state, stable government can work for the people. Otherwise, in a unstable, situation, there is a bargaining and common good is not sought. However, others have maintained that protest can serve as a dialogue medium between the state and civil society when conventional democratic institutions are, discredited and don't function properly. कुछ लोग कहते हैं कि नहीं, कॉन्टेंशियल सिविल सोसाइटी डेमोक्रेसी के लिए सही है क्योंकि ये मानना सही नहीं है कि स्टेट हमेशा सही काम करता है. मान लो कि स्टेट उसका जो काम है वो सही तरीके से कर नहीं पाता है, और मान लो कि स्टेट state discredited its own people. Now in such a situation, the contentious civil society, while challenging the state, it actually do a dialogue with the state, and it creates some kind of fear in the state. So state always comes on the track. State always does its function properly due to the role played by the contentious civil society. Okay, moving to the next slide. Now, civil society in dialogue with the state. Now, a growing number of democratic theorists suggest that it is useful to think of civil society as in a creative and critical dialogue with the state. Right. बहुत सारी डेमोक्रेटिक थियोरिस्ट ये कहते हैं कि सिविल सोसाइटी और स्टेट के बीच जो संपर्क है, जो रिलेशनशिप है, वो रिलेशनशिप इज कैरेक्टराइज्ड बाय दिस डायलॉग। और ये होना चाहिए, और ये होना चाहिए। This dialogue is characterized by a type of accountability in which state must defend and justify. ये डायलॉग में जब सिविल सोसाइटी स्टेट के अंदर डायलॉग होता है, तभी स्टेट का ये रेस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी बन जाता है कि स्टेट हैज टू, और स्टेट मस्ट बी अकाउंटेबल टू द सिविल सोसाइटी। How? Now the state must defend and justify and gives an account for its action in answer to the multiple and plural voices raised in the civil society. ये डायलॉग में क्या होता है ना, सिविल सोसाइटी स्टेट का ऊपर बहुत सारी डाउट रेज करता है। तो इन डायलॉग मीन्स इट्स नॉट दैट सिविल सोसाइटी इज अगेंस्ट द स्टेट। सिविल सोसाइटी by having dialogue basically means what here? Dialogue means discussing to produce an agreement. I said it earlier. I mean before, right? तो डायलॉग में क्या होता है ना, सिविल सोसाइटी कुछ कुछ क्वेश्चन पूछता है, ठीक है, और स्टेट वो जो प्रश्न का जवाब देता है, राइट। तो द डायलॉग इज, आप देखिए इधर, दिस डायलॉग is characterized by a type of accountability. ये किसका accountability है? ये state का accountability है। Now, in which the state must defend, justify, give an account of its action in answer to the multiple and plural voices raised in the civil society. तो सिविल सोसाइटी जितने सारी प्रश्न पूछता है और जो वॉइस सिविल सोसाइटी रेज करता है, उस प्रश्न और उस वॉइस के सामने स्टेट क्या करता है ना, स्टेट अपना जवाब रखता है, खुद का पॉलिसी को डिफेंड करता है, पॉलिसी फॉर्मेशन को जस्टिफाई करता है, पॉलिसी इंप्लीमेंटेशन को जस्टिफाई करता है, और अपना अपना बात रखता है। तो यानी कि इधर स्टेट इज लाइक ए स्टूडेंट एंड सिविल सोसाइटी इज लाइक ए टीचर। इफ द टीचर विल आस्क, द स्टूडेंट हैज टू आंसर। Now, plural voice is nothing but public opinion and political function of the public opinion. Okay, I'm sorry. Plural voice is nothing but public opinion. And the political function of public opinion is simply no public criticism. Critical debate in the public sphere becomes a test of legitimacy for the test. तो ये जो प्लूरल वॉइस को सिविल सोसाइटी रेज करता है, ये प्लूरल वॉइस है क्या ना, दिस प्लूरल वॉइस is all about the public opinion, right? And what is the function of public opinion? There are many functions of public opinion. Now there is political function of public opinion. What is the political function of public opinion? ना public criticism. तो सिविल सोसाइटी क्या करता है ना, सिविल सोसाइटी ये जो पब्लिक क्रिटिसिज्म है, उस क्रिटिसिज्म को लेके स्टेट के सामने रख देता है। और स्टेट, since state is accountable to the people, state is accountable to the people, it means state is accountable to the civil society. तो सिविल सोसाइटी के सामने पब्लिक क्रिटिसिज्म को स्टेट रेस्पॉन्ड करता है और अपना पक्ष वो रखता है। Now, injustice and domination cannot survive along with the scrutiny of an enlightened and civic-minded public. यानी कि जहां सिविल सोसाइटी रहता है, वहां इनजस्टिस एंड डोमिनेशन सरवाइव नहीं कर पाता है। सिविल सोसाइटी का मतलब क्या है ना, इट इज द स्क्रूटिनी ऑफ एन एनलाइटेंड सिविक माइंडेड पीपल। So who are the part of civil society? Those who are part of civil society, they are required to be enlightened and civic-minded public. Enlightened, civic-minded public. जब तक enlightened and civic-minded public सिविल सोसाइटी में हिस्सा होते हैं और सिविल सोसाइटी इज इन कांस्टेंट डायलॉग विद द स्टेट, तब तक स्टेट इनजस्टिस और डोमिनेशन नहीं कर पाता है। बट द क्वेश्चन इज हाउ टू प्रमोट एंड मेंटेन ए पब्लिक स्फीयर दैट परफॉर्म्स द फंक्शन ऑफ क्रिटिकल डायलॉग पार्टनर। तो प्रश्न क्या है कि हाउ टू प्रमोट एंड मेंटेन ए पब्लिक स्फीयर that performs the function of critical dialogue partner। तो क्वेश्चन क्या है कि हम वो सिविल सोसाइटी को कैसे बनाएं, उसको कैसे प्रमोट करें, जहां Actually, civil society plays the role of a critical dialogue partner. तो इसका मतलब यही है कि सिविल सोसाइटी में भी कुछ प्रॉब्लम हो सकता है. So theory of civil society says that it is the constitution, it is the constitution of the enlightened and civic-minded people or public, and that public, as long as they are performing their role, then the state cannot do injustice, cannot state cannot be based on some kind of domination. So students, are you getting?
Yes, sir.
Okay, it's continuing again. Now, it is not the state, but the members of civil society who bear the responsibility of sustaining a effective democratic public sphere. तो जो लोग सिविल सोसाइटी और स्टेट के बीच डायलॉग का संपर्क के साथ खड़े होते हैं, उनका ये मानना है कि डेमोक्रेटिक एक इफेक्टिव डेमोक्रेटिक पब्लिक स्फीयर के लिए, I mean, the state is not responsible for making a effective democratic public sphere. Rather, it is the member of civil society. They are responsible for effective democratic public sphere. वो स्टेट का काम नहीं है कि डेमोक्रेटिक पब्लिक स्फीयर को मेंटेन करने के लिए. ये काम किसका है ना, ये काम सिविल सोसाइटी का है. It is the responsibility of the civil society to sustain an effective democratic public sphere. Only when actors consciously try to enhance, expand, and transform the public sphere as they participate in it can the public sphere thrive. तो इसका मतलब कि जो enlightened civic minded persons as a member of civil society, वो जब तक अपना काम, only when actors consciously try to, जब तक अपना काम को सही ढंग से करेंगे, तब तक ये जो डेमोक्रेटिक पब्लिक स्फीयर है, तभी डेमोक्रेटिक पब्लिक स्फीयर सस्टेन होता है एंड इफेक्टिव भी होता है. ठीक है. The contrast is between mere users of public sphere who pursue their political goals within already existing forum and with little or no interest in the procedures themselves, and creators of public sphere who are interested in expanding democracy as they pursue their more particularistic goal. Okay, let me reread it. It's not easy to understand, students. The contrast is between mere users of public sphere who pursue their political goals within the already existing forum with little or no interest in the procedures themselves, and the creator of public sphere who are interested in expanding democracy as they pursue their more particularistic goal. Acha, okay, I got it. So it means that how to create a effective democratic public sphere. Now, the effective democratic public spheres can be built if the members of civil society, if the members of civil society are enlightened and civic minded, people, right? And how to identify whether the members of civil society are, the enlightened civic minded people? I think the answer lies it here. Okay. Now there are actually two kinds of members. Now, one kind of member is that they are the users of public sphere, and another kind of members are they are the creator of public sphere. So, what is the difference between the user of public sphere and the creator of public sphere? Now, user of public spheres, they don't create the public sphere; they just use the public sphere to pursue their particular goal. I mean, the user of public sphere, they don't sacrifice anything. They always work like a interest group, right? They always satisfy their interest. They have no or little or no interest in the procedures, right? उनका काम है, उनका जो गोल है, पॉलिटिकल गोल है, वो उसको कैसे अचीव करे। ये एक प्रकार का, आई मीन दिस इज वन qualities of civil society members. The another kinds of members of civil society are there who are called the creator of public sphere. वो क्या करते हैं ना, वो सेक्रीफाइस करते हैं, वो क्रिटिकली एंगेज करते हैं। उनका मतलब ये नहीं है कि वो अपना जो स्वार्थ है, अपना जो इंटरेस्ट है, वो उसको कैसे सेटिस्फाई करे। उनका इंटरेस्ट वो नहीं है। उनका इंटरेस्ट है कि हम प्रोसीज्योर को कैसे बनाएं, डेमोक्रेसी को कैसे एक्सपांड करें, कॉमन गुड को कैसे अचीव करें। और ये जो सेकेंड टाइप का जो लोग हैं, द क्रिएटर ऑफ पब्लिक स्फीयर, नाउ दे आई मीन दे एस्टैब्लिश ए इफेक्टिव डेमोक्रेटिक पब्लिक स्फीयर। ये यूजर ऑफ पब्लिक स्फीयर वो इफेक्टिव डेमोक्रेटिक पब्लिक स्फीयर को बना नहीं पाते हैं। दे कैन नॉट क्रिएट द इफेक्टिव डेमोक्रेटिक पब्लिक स्फीयर। Who can create the democratic public sphere? Now, it is the creator of public sphere. A question arises that when does critical opposition strengthen democracy and its claim to legitimacy, and when does it lead to democratic breakdown? अभी प्रॉब्लम यह है कि ये जो डायलॉग होता है कि कभी कभी सिविल सोसाइटी बिकम्स वेरी क्रिटिकल ऑन दिस स्टेट, right? So when civil society becomes very critical on the state, then there is a democratic background. ठीक है, तो इसीलिए when civil society is critical of the state, civil society should also maintain some principle distance. It should not think that it is powerful than the state, and it should always pull down the state. If the civil society will always pull down the state, then there is a democratic breakdown. So when does the critical opposition strengthen democracy? तो सिविल सोसाइटी को ये तय करना है वो कहां तक स्टेट को खींच सकता है। और आई मीन व्हेन डज क्रिटिकल ऑपोजिशन स्ट्रेंथन डेमोक्रेसी, इसका मतलब यही है कि सिविल सोसाइटी स्टेट को कहां तक खींच सकता है। एंड व्हाट इज द पर्पज? पर्पज इज स्ट्रेंथनिंग द डेमोक्रेसी। So the purpose is not democratic, background. The purpose is, strengthening democracy. It is all about very simple actually. कि एक टीचर जब अपना स्टूडेंट को बहुत ज्यादा क्रिटिसाइज करता है तब स्टूडेंट ब्रेकडाउन कर जाता है। तो ये टीचर का पर्पज होना नहीं चाहिए। टीचर का पर्पज यही है कि हाउ टू स्ट्रेंथन दैट स्टूडेंट। तो क्रिटिसिज्म जब करता है टीचर, उसका भी कोई लिमिट होना चाहिए। इस पॉइंट का मतलब वही है। So the next point, civil society in support of the state. So how civil society support to the state? So students, let me take 1 minute break, and coming back, be there. So welcome back. Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay, okay. So the next, relationship between the civil society and state is that civil society supports to the state. So how? Now, civil society builds social ties and a sense of mutual obligation by weaving together the isolated individual into a fabric of a larger group, trying to separate individuals to purposes beyond their private interests. Their reciprocal ties nourished in civil society are the wellspring of democratic life. तो इसका मतलब वही है कि सिविल सोसाइटी इज ए फ्रेंड ऑफ द स्टेट. हाउ? ना सिविल सोसाइटी प्रोड्यूस citizens. And who are the citizens? Now, citizens are those persons who are not guided by their private interest. Citizens are always guided by their common interest. They are not in रूसो का लैंग्वेज में हम बोलेंगे कि द सिटीजन्स आर दोज हु आर गाइडेड बाय their रियल इंटरेस्ट, एंड देन ओनली the state can be in a position to achieve the general will, right? तो सिविल सोसाइटी का काम क्या है ना? वो आप इधर से पढ़िए. टाइंग separate individuals to pursue beyond their private interest. Pursue beyond their private interest means to pursue their common interest, right? So the civil society, through making the citizens, it is positively connected with the state, right? So civil society are the wellspring of democratic life, right? So civil society, because of civil society, a democratic life is possible. And democratic life is always the very purpose of a state. Right? The viability of liberal democracy depends on producing the requisite democratic disposition. Democracy without democrats is a precarious proposition. So democracy means democrats. Democrats means citizens in real terms. Citizens who leads a democratic life. Democratic life means a life which is guided by the common good. We cannot build a strong political community assuming a race of devils, right? Here, who are the devils? If the individuals are guided by their private interests, if they are guided by their actual will, then it is devil, and they are devil. And democracy, right? A strong political community. A strong political community means a strong democracy. Now, a strong democracy cannot be built or constituted by devils. Instead, we need to be attentive to identify the formation and the inculcation of the values, and civil society plays a key role in the formation and inculcation of value. तो यानी कि लोगों का जो प्राइवेट इंटरेस्ट के प्रति बाय नेचर वी आर ऑल डेविल, but it is the civil society by generating the concern about the common good. The civil society transform us from devil to divine. That's the civil society actually does the role towards producing some values, divine quality values. Okay. Civil society produces associational life, right? And what is that value through which a devil becomes a divine? Now a devil becomes a divine only when the devil knows the associational life, right? So civil society produces associational life as both a sphere of pluralism and a sphere that produce common value. So if individuals are part of the associational life, then they are divine. If they are not part of the associational life, then they are devil. तो सिविल सोसाइटी क्या करता है ना? वो एसोसिएशनल लाइफ को फॉर्म करता है. एंड When individuals becomes the member of or becomes a part of associational life, then it is natural that they will think through and they will work towards common value. The pursuit of plural ends in associational the pursuit of plural ends in association and cooperation with each other has the result of creating a common civic culture that can transcend the pluralism and create bonds of the community. So pluralism means it is basically the presence of many, right? Now the presence of many will wither away and a creative, a bond of community can be produced only when people must cooperate each other, they must pursue the common good. So when all different individual in a group they pursue common good, that means they becomes united. So though they are different from each other, but they are united, they create a strong bondage. So within the group you can find many intra diversity within the group. There is diversity, but still then how a group sustains, and group sustains because there is a role of civil society. Civil society injects certain values called associational life within the individual. And despite the group is plural in character, but at the end, the group ends with a bonds of, or civil society creates bonds of community within a group. Now, civil society in support of the state, okay, we are actually continuing. Now, some of the virtues acquired through associational partnership are said to be toleration. And what are the virtues that can be derived from the associational life? Now, these virtues are the toleration, cooperation, respect, reciprocity. The experience of associational life may be directed to different ends, such as, uh, bowling for some, religious devotion for others, neighborhood, fair. Okay, I think don't read. Okay, don't read this. Okay, forget it. In fact, the virtue of associational life is the toleration, cooperation, respect, reciprocity. In fact, this is the lesson of citizenship. इसका मतलब हम सिटीजन किसको कहेंगे ना, जिसके पास टॉलरेशन हो. टॉलरेशन का मतलब क्या है? It's not that if you do something wrong, I will tolerate it, and you will say that, sir, you are very much tolerant. No, we should not be tolerant to intolerance. So toleration basically means that if I cannot falsify your logic, I must not disregard your logic. I must respect your logic. I must tolerate your logic. This is toleration. And if you cannot falsify my argument, then you should have respect to my logic. This is called toleration from your side. So we must have toleration to each other because we cannot falsify each other's position. Then cooperation, respect, reciprocity. Now these are the characters of the citizenship. Moving to the next slide. Now civil society in partnership with the state. इसका मतलब क्या है? Now with the growing complexity of new challenges to governance and democracy, the state cannot deliver goods without the help and mediation of the non-state sector. Seeing deeply, the problem is really a problem of democracy and self-government. Legitimacy requires more citizens' participation and input into policy decision. This in turn requires the devolution of authority onto citizens, association. Without citizens, association, large paternalistic welfare state while delivering goods becomes intrusive, controlling, dehumanizing. Citizens association must not lead towards deregulation, rather self-regulation through which citizen can build the basis of the autonomy and self-respect. Wonderful statement. New governance models are sometimes conceived as hard-won victories on the part of citizens. The state is seen, if not as the enemy, then at least as an unwilling partner, because it knows that it cannot perform its function without citizens taking on responsibilities. क्या बात है? तो इसका मतलब क्या है कि धीरे धीरे स्टेट का जो रेस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी, स्टेट का काम थोड़ा ज्यादा हो रहा है, कॉम्प्लेक्सिटीज थोड़ा ज्यादा हो रहा है. देयर इज ए ग्रोइंग कॉम्प्लेक्सिटी. देयर आर न्यू चैलेंजेस ऑफ गवर्नेंस एंड डेमोक्रेसी. और इतने सारे काम आ जाता है कि स्टेट कैन नॉट डिलीवर द गुड्स. स्टेट इतना काम नहीं कर सकता है विदाउट द हेल्प एंड मेडिएशन ऑफ द नॉन स्टेट सेक्टर. ये नॉन स्टेट सेक्टर क्या है? यही तो सिविल सोसाइटी है. So without the help of civil society, the state cannot deliver the goods, because the state alone cannot deal with the complexities and new challenges. Right. The problem is really the problem of democracy and self-government. Legitimacy requires more citizen. I mean, एक state के लिए, okay, give me a minute, I'm just coming back. Okay, welcome back. So seeing deeply, the problem is really the problem of democracy and self-government. Legitimacy requires more citizens' participation and input into the policy decision. So legitimacy का मतलब क्या है? Legitimacy basically means people trust. एक state के लिए legitimacy of the people is very important. So legitimacy means more participation of citizens in policy making and policy implementation, right? So on one hand, state has to maintain the legitimacy of the people. On the other hand, the state cannot perform its own function. So it is always better for the state, to make civil society as its partner in governance, in formulating the policy decision and implementing the policy decision. So that's why the state always depends upon the citizens association. Citizens association is all about civil society, right? So if the state will not develop a partnership with citizens association, then the state, while performing the paternalistic welfare activities, the state may becomes authoritarian. The state may become, or state may, it will develop a kind of hegemony. In a negative sense, actually, the state will be a hegemon, and thereby, state will be dehumanized, right? And citizens association must not lead towards the deregulation. तो इसका मतलब क्या है कि स्टेट कभी नहीं चाहता है कि वो इंट्रूसिव होए, कंट्रोलिंग बने, डिह्यूमनाइज बन जाए. वो स्टेट कभी नहीं चाहता है. तो इसीलिए स्टेट वो ये होगा तो फिर पीपुल्स जो लेजिटिमेसी वो चला जाएगा, स्टेट प्रॉब्लम में आ जाएगा. ठीक है. तो इसीलिए स्टेट क्या करता है ना, सिटीजन एसोसिएशन को अपना पार्टनर बनाता है. जब सिटीजन एसोसिएशन बिकम्स द पार्टनर ऑफ द स्टेट, they must not I mean, citizens association must not lead towards deregulation, rather self-regulation through which citizens can build the basis of autonomy and self-respect. जब स्टेट सिटीजन एसोसिएशन को पार्टनर बनाता है तभी सिटीजन्स एसोसिएशन रूल्स को तोड़ना नहीं चाहिए, रेदर अपने लिए रूल्स को वो बनाना चाहिए। ठीक है, वो अपना रूल खुद बनाएगा और उसी रूल्स के हिसाब में चलेगा, तभी सिटीजन्स एसोसिएशन का अपना जो ऑटोनॉमी और सेल्फ रिस्पेक्ट प्रोटेक्ट हो जाएगा। इसका मतलब the state has no role over the autonomy and self-respect of citizens association, because the autonomy and self-respect of the citizens association is ensured by its own regulation, so it is not controlled by the state's regulation. Now, new governance models are sometimes conceived as hard-won victories on the part of citizens. The state is seen, if not as the enemy, then at least an unwilling partner, because it knows that it cannot perform its function without citizens taking responsibility. Right? So, जब ये सिटीजन्स एसोसिएशन अपना ऑटोनॉमी और सेल्फ रेस्पेक्ट को मेंटेन करके स्टेट के साथ काम करते हैं, वो एक न्यू गवर्नेंस मॉडल बन जाता है। ठीक है, और ये जो न्यू गवर्नेंस मॉडल है, ये न्यू गवर्नेंस मॉडल क्या है ना, द सिटीजन्स एसोसिएशन थ्रू सेल्फ रेगुलेशन विल वर्क फॉर द स्टेट ऑन द बेसिस ऑफ मेंटेनिंग देयर ऑटोनॉमी एंड सेल्फ रेस्पेक्ट। राइट, वो एक मॉडल बन जाता है, उसको न्यू गवर्नेंस मॉडल कहा जाता है। और ये न्यू गवर्नेंस मॉडल इज इन फैक्ट इट इज ए विक्ट्री on the part of citizen. It's a victory on the part of citizen. तो स्टेट को ये अच्छा नहीं लगता है, फिर भी स्टेट उसको विरोध नहीं करता है, क्योंकि स्टेट को पता है, because state knows that it cannot perform its function without citizens taking on responsibility. स्टेट को ये पता, क्योंकि स्टेट हमेशा चाहता है, स्टेट इज ऑलवेज पावर सीकर, राइट, मगर स्टेट उसको इसको विरोध नहीं कर पाता है। क्यों? क्योंकि स्टेट को मालूम है कि विदाउट द हेल्प ऑफ सिटीजन्स एसोसिएशन इट मे नॉट परफॉर्म इट्स रेस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी। thereby state is always afraid of losing people's legitimacy. So that's why state unwillingly the state accepts the partnership of civil society with it. Then civil society beyond the state, इसका मतलब स्टेट सिविल सोसाइटी का अंडर आ जाता है। चलो पढ़ते हैं उसको। Now, global civil society can be said to have arisen in the anticipation of rather than in response to a global liberal, constitutional state. This is important. Why the global civil society is emerging? Because there is a emergence of the global liberal constitutional state. इसका मतलब है जो इंटरनेशनल ऑर्गेनाइजेशन यूनाइटेड नेशन जब सभी स्टेट को रिप्रेजेंट करता है, that becomes a body, that becomes a constitutional state. Now, in response to those kind of constitutional state, global civil society has emerged. Now, global civil society theorists criticizes what they term methodological nationalism, by which they mean our tendency to think in terms of national rather than transnational categories. So those theorists who comes under global civil society or global civil society theorists, they criticize the methodological nationalism, right? So they criticize civil society is not, or civil society should not be controlled by the boundary of their state. यानी कि the Indian civil society should not always work within the territory of India. They have also a sense, or they have also a presence in the global civil society. So Indian civil society can also raise its voice, the issues which is happening outside the Indian territory. The problem with the methodological nationalism in case of civil society is that it restricts our understanding of a phenomena to comparing the qualities and quantities of civil society in different states. Right. So it means civil society is not limited to a state. Civil society is beyond the state. Civil society can work within the state. Civil society can work outside the state. So this is or this understanding, global civil society theories they brought forth. Now, globalization itself has put a number of issues on activists' agenda that clearly transcendent, borders. Landmines, human rights, climate change, AIDS, cooperative responsibility. Now, years of issues of landmines है, human right है, climate change है, HIV, AIDS, वगैरह वगैरह बहुत सारी issues है, which is, I mean, these issues are not the issues within the boundary of a nation state. Rather than these issues, cuts across the boundary. These issues does not believe in the boundary of a nation state. Hence, civil society working in any state must have the right to raise their voice on these issues, and they are part of the global civil society. So global civil society as such, it is not there. Rather than it is the constitution of all the civil societies, working in different nation states. And global civil society raise the issues which are of global concern. For example, human rights, climate change, corporate corporate responsibility, etc. and etc. Now, civil society beyond that, okay, it is continuing. Now, global civil society is nothing less than the harbinger of a new form of global governance. A system of global governance has emerged which involves both states and international institutions. Okay, there is a additional. So, civil societies which are working within the state, they are part of the global civil society, and at the same time, you know, different non-state, I mean, civil societies that deals with the non-state actors. Civil societies that deals with the non-state actors, they are also, part of the global civil society. So global civil society is nothing less than a harbinger of a new form of global governance. A system of global governance has emerged which involves both states and international institutions. It is not a single state, but a system in which states are increasingly hemmed in by a set of agreements, treaties, and rules of transnational character. Increasingly, these rules are based not just on agreement between the state but on the public support generated through the global civil society. Okay, I think there is no. Don't read it. Don't read it. It's a very complex issue. It needs further explanation. Come to this point. Now, global civil society works on the dialogue model, that is, through a global public sphere. Its most prominent weapon and research is publicity. It questions and criticizes nation state on global issue, right? So, global civil society का काम क्या है? Now, it always question and criticize the nation state on global issue, because all the nation states are very much self-centric. They don't raise the issues of global concern. So that's why global civil society is there to raise the global concern, and hence global civil society always welcome those civil societies which are working within the boundary of a nation state. So whether it is global or domestic civil society, its existence depends on the existence of a state. right? So if state is not there, then civil society is of no use. So the existence of one depends on the existence of other. It will continue to constrain, challenge, and discipline the state in important ways, but it cannot replace the state. तो सिविल सोसाइटी हमेशा ये चाहता है कि स्टेट को होना चाहिए. जब स्टेट नहीं रहेगा तो सिविल सोसाइटी का कोई मतलब नहीं रहेगा. तो इसीलिए सिविल सोसाइटी डज नॉट वांट टू रिप्लेस द स्टेट, but yes, civil society always wants the state to exist. Then only civil society can function. And what is the function of civil society? It is to constrain the state. It is to challenge the state. It is to discipline the state. So this is it, students, the relationship between the state and civil society. Now let me know, did you understand it? Did you understand?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay, any confusion? Any questions? You can also discover, other kinds of relation between the civil society and the state. So did you know it earlier? आज जो मैंने डिस्कशन किया रिलेशनशिप का बारे में, क्या आपको ये पहले पता था? और कुछ ऐसा मतलब 2-3 रिलेशनशिप पता था आपको?
No, sir.
No, sir.
Okay. So I think this is a unique experience. I hope that you got a sense of, relationship. So relationship is all about, politics. There is always, politics in each and every relationship. And in the 6 types of relationship or the 6 perspectives on the, relationship between the state and civil society, you can also find, multiple politics. So when you will become a researcher in your PhD, you can, if you work on this theme, you can, you can take any one relationship and you can discover multiple, politics in that, relationship. Students, if there is any question asked on the relationship between the civil society and state, try to write these points, but you must follow the languages what I have used in my PPT. For your understanding, I just simplify all these language. But when you write, your English must represent your quality. And try to write good English, good sentence. Try to understand the complex words, complex sentences, complex understanding. Then only you can become a political science student. It is all about, it is a process of becoming. So students, thank you so much. And I think your civil society chapter is, done. So if you have any problem, you view it again this talk on YouTube. And if you find any problem, you can also ask me in the class, offline class. So thank you so much. I'm stopping the recording. Thank you.